Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 22nd meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Hayner? Absent. Councilmember Dish?
Present.
Councilmember Griswold?
Here.
Councilmember Song?
Here.
Councilmember Graham?
Here.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Mayor Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Iyer?
Here.
Councilmember Nelson?
Here.
Councilmember Briggs?
Here.
Councilmember Mlawi?
Present.
We have a quorum.
May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Medina, seconded by Councilmember Griswold. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
No, Mayor, not beyond what we have.
Thank you. We have an introduction today, an update on Human Services Partnership Framework and Timeline from Ms. Gelati. Ms. Gelati of the Con.
Mayor, Ms. Gelati should be joining us virtually.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. Really excited to give an update on the new Human Services Partnership. I'm going to share a slide deck with you all as soon as the clerk allows me to share my screen here momentarily. I just want to confirm that you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much. So let me just pick up where we left off. As many of you know, we started last summer working really intensively about working on the new Human Services Partnership. This is to replace coordinated funding model. We made a bit of progress, but didn't finish in time. And so both City Council and the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners actually passed 6-month extensions through this June, through the end of June of 2022. So we do have funding through that time period. So we've been working very diligently in this time frame to make sure we have a funding round in place this spring to replace the cycle and additional funding rounds. And I'll run through that in just a moment. Beginning in December, we actually expanded the leadership teams from both the city and the county. And I want to thank the city and the county leadership for being so engaged, including council members Grand, Radina, and Song, and the city administrator and community services administrator. It's been great. We've been meeting pretty rigorously the last 2 months on this process. So appreciate everyone's commitment to moving this work forward. As we shift from the coordinated funding model to really what is a public partnership between the city and the county, we are changing a little bit of our goals. So we've expanded them in some cases and are really delineating what we'd like to see in this process. So one of the main things is this desire to make impact and move the needle for those facing institutional inequities while also supporting the safety net. Now, I do want to acknowledge that that is a tension, and a lot of it would depending on the funding available, that we both want to maintain the safety net, which does require an investment, as well as being able to have the impact of seeing the change in the base conditions. So we'll be talking about that throughout, but it is a challenge, and I do appreciate that we're trying to aspire to do both of them through this new process. One of the main shifts that we have is we're trying to incorporate equity throughout the process. That's everything from a very accessible application process to making a much more community inclusive review process, making sure that there is an equity review of all of the actual grant applicants. And we're going to be doing that through the use of an outside evaluator. And we're also going to be looking for equity in the service delivery of who actually receives the services to make sure it's reaching underserved or underrepresented communities, those in need that maybe don't have access. A lot of the change in the direction is also focusing on addressing institutional racism, poverty, and trauma as the root cause of institutional inequity. So it's not necessarily these specific categories of funding that we had previously, although it may likely be some of those same providers doing that work because it still addresses those issues. But we want to make sure that all of our investments are related to addressing racism, poverty, and trauma. As we're redeveloping the strategic framework for investing resources and making it an equitable grant making process, we want to make sure that we have a few things in place, that the outcomes and goals are co-created with experts in the community, that we incorporate the lessons we've learned from COVID-19 response and the previous coordinated funding model. I think a lot of people in the shift with the pandemic, there was a huge change in service delivery. We learned a lot about how to reach people, what to do when we had a digital divide. So we want to make sure that a lot that we learned, we can still take advantage of it, not necessarily fall back into previous patterns of service delivery. We want to make sure there's accessibility from grantees, that there is the ability for underrepresented, new or growing organizations or groups to access funding. That was a critique of the previous funding model. And I've mentioned before, our ease of process, both for the applicants and for staff. And we want to make sure that there's some ability to have flexibility as even if we make a funding commitment for multiple years, that we can pivot, that we can adjust as there are emerging needs. So it's a lot to sort of aspire to, but we want to make sure we put our goals up front and that throughout it all, the partnership continues to allow for shared communication, links to community partners, whether they're providers or other funders, and that there's ongoing supports in place for the community. As we're envisioning the new Human Services Partnership, we are proposing 3 different funding rounds that work complementary. One is safety net contracts, and these would be 5-year grants that are supporting those at or below or just over the poverty line, where we're basically trying to provide some of the most basic services around healthcare access, emergency food access or food security, housing, in particular related to those experiencing homelessness, and childcare for those, again, at or below the poverty line. We're not going to ask anyone to scale their programs. We just want to have folks in the community who deliver these services with a proven track record continue to do so and maintain that safety net. This is going to be the first funding round that we do work on this spring. The second bucket of funding that we're exploring is Human Services mini grants. We'd like to target these to Black, Indigenous, people of color led and minority led institutions. The idea would be to work on innovative, new or improved projects. We'd be willing to take a little bit more risk with these, maybe try out an idea that has been in the community that people have always wanted to know if it can really make a difference. That it would be a 1-year grant, a simplified and short RFP process. And if things are successful, although some things might fail, some things may be successful, there is the ability to move it to a 5-year grant later on. The last bucket of funding is what we consider the high impact grants. And this is where we would want to see a substantial change in impact from the program that's being delivered or the project or programming. So these are program systems or initiatives that provide new additive funding for programming. So it could be something complementary that was an additional service that if it was there could really greatly improve the conditions of families in our community. It could be a deeper service delivery for those households. It could be a different kind of scale, but we are looking for some sort of scaling and increase and a positive change for anyone who participates in the program. We'd want to also be working with folks in the community, service providers with a proven track record, so that they would have the capacity to take on this additional service delivery of some sort. And we would be incorporating some time in the first year for some strategic planning, so it can scale up and ramp up over the course of 5 years. This would also be a competitive grant. So one of the questions that's come up is, what is the difference, or what do we see as the difference between the coordinated funding model and what we're proposing right now with this human services partnership? Some of the real obvious ones are, we don't have some of those local funding partners that we did previously. So in coordinated funding, we had St. Joe's Hospital and Arbor Area Community Foundation, United Way of Washtenaw County, along with the public partners. Currently in this human services partnership, it is just the public partners, Washtenaw County, the city of Ann Arbor, and the Washtenaw Urban County. With coordinated funding, the funded areas of programs were specific in the program operations area. They were Cradle to Career, which was early childhood and school-age youth, the aging sector, safety net health and nutrition, and housing and homelessness. For the Human Services Partnership, we're saying really the entire 3 buckets that we talked about are about addressing root causes of institutional inequities, really about racism, poverty, and trauma. In the safety net, we do define a few areas where we'd like to see support, and that's the emergency food system, housing and homelessness, childcare, and healthcare access. The other frameworks, the funding frameworks also differ. Coordinated funding had a much more philanthropic funding framework, which makes sense considering that we worked with Community Foundation and other philanthropic partners. We're really looking to shift that to be much more of an equitable funding framework, again, incorporating equity throughout that process. The funding duration is also different. The coordinated funders had a 2-year funding rounds, occasionally with extensions. The Human Services Partnership, we are proposing 5-year funding rounds for the safety net and the high impact grants. That is a best practice. It really provides stability, specifically with those safety net provisions, and also gives a chance for those high impact funds for people to have time to really see results. A lot of times with new programming, by the time you ramp it up, it does, it can potentially end after 2 years. We want there to be enough time where we can see whether or not there are positive outcomes from the intervention. On the evaluation side, the coordinated funders did have an annual review that was done mostly by staff and did have some outside evaluation, although it was limited and it was intermittent. It was done at different times. We're proposing with the Human Services Partnership that the evaluator would be on board at the point we start the program, and they'd be deeply involved in helping actually the grantees establish some of the outcomes and develop some of the outcome tracking and metric tracking, and provide some of that capacity as well to the grantees to help develop them. Those sorts of things around developing reporting and metric tracking can also be used to apply for additional funds outside of the new Human Services Partnership. The timing for this is fairly aggressive. I mentioned that the 6-month grant extension runs through just the month of June. So it's coming up. We're already about to start March. So we want to make sure that we have this in place. The web page that we have listed here does have the full timeline in place. I just kind of wanted to give you a sense of where we are in the process. We're at the very bottom of this particular page here right now at the City Council update. Had a series of meetings. We've released the evaluator RFP. And actually just today we had the leadership team meeting, which was actually a really good discussion that we had today. So we'll be starting recruiting volunteers and actually releasing the safety net grant at the end of March, with the proposals due at the end of April. We'll be bringing those to the consideration of City Council and the Board of Commissioners at the first meeting in June. Then we're going to actually repeat this process with the mini grants and the high impact grants in summer and fall, reconvening the leadership teams to work out the details of those funding rounds as well. One of the biggest questions that people have been asking is, especially our partners in the community who are looking to apply for these grants, is really what is available, what did we have for funding, what are we thinking about for funding levels. So just for context, provided some previous funding levels for City of Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County and our other partners as well. Generally, in the previous coordinated funding rounds for program operations, there was between 4.3 and 4.5 million available for grants. There were a number of different grantees between 33 and 38. The range of the grants varied from everything from 14,000 to over 315,000 and everything in between. So there's quite a different range of grants that were available. What we're proposing for each of these different funding buckets or funding rounds is a little bit more explicit. For the safety net grants, we would like to provide about 10 different awards between $200,000 and $300,000 in annual operating support for the safety net grant providers for a total of $3 million annually. For the mini grants, those one-year grants, the high risk, high reward, try out new agencies, try out new ideas, we would like to do up to $40,000 in an annual award and do about 15 awards every year. For the high impact grants, we'd be looking for a 5-year grant commitment of $300,000 annually to a grantee, and this will be a smaller number, about 5 awards. Just think there would be less people that are kind of positioned to take advantage of this, at least the first time we ran this, but it'd be about 1.5 million annually. We're also estimating about $300,000 a year for evaluation. So the goal for our funding goal for all of this is about 5.4 million. Currently, we have available about 2.2 million with our funding, our public partners. So of course the question is there a way to get more funding? So I know you all are in the process of looking or working with the community to solicit ideas and consider the use of ARPA funds for a number of different initiatives. I know coordinated funding was listed initially within the survey, and that those will be some ongoing decisions you make in the next month or so. For the community partners, though, we did check in with a number of them. St. Joe's actually is in the process of running their current funding round, so they're not going to be able to partner with us, but they did want to coordinate potentially passing off applications that might fit better for us and vice versa. When we talked with the United Way, since they do an annual campaign at the United Way for funding, it's hard for them to commit for more than 1 or 2 years of funding. So the 5-year funding rounds, while they understood why we'd want to make that commitment and the sort of security that it provides grantees, they probably won't be able to partner for those, but they could potentially for the mini grants. So they are open to having a conversation or receiving an invitation from us. When we talked to the Ann Arbor Community Foundation in the fall, they were interested in the high impact funds, but potentially would like to see sort of what we reviewed and then take a look at the possibilities of who they could invest in after we had done the community review process. And we had initiated a conversation with Michigan Medicine, who was interested in following up, but we have no updates there. So we'll be following up with them over the next few weeks, actually. So that was a lot of information. Just our next steps, we are going to be reaching out, sort of hinted at, to sort of other funding partners. So reaching out to those community funders, but also other local units of government to see if there's interest in joining in at this time. Really to see if we can do a broader public partnership there. We'll also be working on reviewing the evaluator proposals as those come over. They're coming in over the next week or so. And we're going to be finalizing the reviewer recruitment and outreach and the details for the safety net round. We actually had some of that in our conversation today. And so we'll be releasing a lot of that over the next few weeks. So the community review process will start next week, or probably the next 2 weeks. And then, as I mentioned, the first safety net funding round will be released actually coming up at the end of March. Oops, wrong direction. So that was a lot. Just want to check and see if you had any questions for me.
I think we have one from Councilmember Amlawi, and then perhaps we'll have that be our last and final, and we will then contact you later if we have questions with particularity. Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us tonight and providing us this information. When you refer to the ARPA funds, we know that that is a one-time a round of money that comes to us, but we're looking at 5-year commitments. Has there been any thought to how we continue with those 5-year commitments when that round of funding will be over within 2 years?
Right, I think there's a lot of options there. And I don't want to be presumptuous about kind of what decisions you all will be making. I think there could be the potential to, if there was an amount that was allocated to coordinated funding, to then push that over 4 years. It's my understanding with the deadline, we could do something to that effect. So I think we could recalibrate if that's something that you wanted to invest in. So we could figure that out to sort of potentially do a 4-year commitment and then figure out funding that would extend it to the 5th year. So I think we'd have to sort of figure that out if we knew that was a direction you wanted to move in.
Excellent. Well, Ms. Delati, thank you so much. And if council members have further questions, please contact the gentlewoman.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now come to public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. Speakers will have 3 minutes in which to speak, whether here in chambers or online. Please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Mojan Savabi-Asafani.
Hello, Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor City Council is as corrupt as anything. I am telling you this because of their actions. I encourage you all to read a full, detailed account of why I am calling Ann Arbor City Council corrupt. I call them corrupt because they pretend to care and protect public interest. But in fact, they protect the interests of their campaign contributors. Read all about it. Google it. Ann Arbor Independent. I give them credit and I give them respect for excellent investigative work. So Ann Arbor City Council for years has been saying how they really care about creating affordable housing in this community. They have proposed rezoning as a means by which they want to ease the problem of no housing, no adequate housing for people of low middle income in Ann Arbor. But really, this rezoning that they propose and they're fixing to do will enrich the pockets of people who have contributed thousands of dollars throughout the years to their election and re-election campaigns. So this is how it works. They give them thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. They get elected to city offices, to government offices, and then they will do everything to enrich the pockets of those who helped them get in office. This is corruption. It is the definition of corruption, and that is what we have in Ann Arbor, everyone. City of Ann Arbor pretends they care about workers' rights. They pretend they care about wages that people get. Ms. Iyer here. But they never, ever propose $15 minimum wage. It's not enough to propose a small raise for a handful of workers that work for the city. There is many, many more people who work in Ann Arbor, and we don't even have $15 minimum wage. In fact, talking to people in Ward 4, I know that a lot of people feel even $15 is not enough, and I agree with them. But no one on this Ann Arbor City Council has ever proposed even $15 minimum wage.
Thank you.
And they also have a horrible record on human rights.
Thank you. Our next
The
speaker.
most obvious thing, we are against military
Thank
aid
you.
to Israel. They do not pass.
Our next speaker is
Shame on
Blaine
them.
Coleman.
Kick them out.
My name is Blaine Coleman. I am here to echo the comments of Dr. Savabi Esfahani, who, by the way, is running for City Council in Ward number 4. I agree that this Ann Arbor City Council is giving huge benefits to its huge campaign contributors. And I hope that you will read the articles in MLive and Ann Arbor Independent about that. Just gigantic benefits to people who own large tracts of land which are apparently going to be developed. Ann Arbor City Council also takes care of its campaign contributors who are old friends of the Israel Defense Forces. Old friends of the Israel Defense Forces contributing to election campaign funds in an Ann Arbor City Council election. And boy, have they reaped big benefits from that. This City Council today, last year, the year before, and for the past 20 years, this City Council has thrown its weight against even considering the smallest resolution for Palestinian human rights. This resolution that we have proposed for years, 7 little words. Can you see it? We are against military aid to Israel, to the apartheid state of Israel. This City Council cannot even manage to allow this resolution to even be debated. That's the definition of racism. When you see Israel taking your tax dollars and murdering thousands and thousands of Palestinians, and your Ann Arbor City Council cannot even say a small peep of protest against that, while pretending to be against racism, it's a racist city council, in my opinion.
Our next speaker is Eric Lipson via phone.
Mr. Lipson is calling in remotely. Mr. Lipson, you should be able to press *6 to unmute yourself. Mr. Lipson, phone number 604. Press *6 to unmute your phone.
Hi, there we go. I'm sorry. This is Eric Lipson from the 4th Ward, and I wanted to comment tonight on the Commission for Tenants, the Tenants' Rights Commission. I think that's a really good idea. It's an extension of the ordinance that the council passed to change the deadlines for tenants when they have to sign leases. And I think that having a council for the tenants' rights is really, really a long time overdue, and I applaud you for doing that. I did have a question about one person who's being nominated, and I know that there is because this person is a resident of Ypsilanti, and I don't think that is necessarily disqualifying for this. This person, as it turns out, is extremely qualified in areas having to do with formerly incarcerated individuals, and it seems like his skills would be much more appropriate for the Human Rights Commission or the Police Oversight Commission. I don't think anybody's going to vote against him, but I think considering his area of expertise, that would be more important. And also, speaking of the Tenants' Rights Commission, I think that commission would probably want to have some input on the TC1 proposal to turn the State and Eisenhower area into the transit corridor, because this will affect tenants. I think also the entire city should have more access to a discussion. There's been very, very little public comment. This has gone through planning, but it hasn't gone through a real whole city master plan review. Without any revision to the master plan or notice to residents beyond 1,000 feet from the area to be rezoned to a high-density transit corridor, you're going to rezone those 68 properties. And despite I have to say, I agree with Blaine for a change, despite the appreciation and value that the landowners are going to receive by this upzoning, there is no commensurate requirement to promote the city's energy and climate goals or affordable housing. In fact, there's no public benefit or any other benefits to the city. This is merely a gift to the developers, and as has been stated, it's even more shocking that one of the mayor's major donors just happened to be the agent for 14 of those properties. That's over 20%, most of which were purchased since the mayor took office. The appearance of impropriety shocks the conscience. So maybe there is nothing going on, but the lack of transparency in this whole process makes it suspect.
Time.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Glenn Nelson.
Mr. Nelson, phone number 733, go ahead.
I'm Glenn Nelson, one of the leaders of
Ma'am.
Citizens for Mental Health and Public Safety.
We can't kick them out.
Excuse me?
We will.
Mr. Nelson, you may begin again if you wish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Glenn Nelson, one of the founders of Citizens for Mental Health and Public Safety. I strongly urge you to place high priority on human and social services, including affordable and supportive housing, as you allocate the ARPA funds. There are at least 3 compelling reasons to do this. First, the pandemic has taken a terrible toll on people. They need help to keep their lives together and hopefully soon begin to get their lives back on track. Good human and social services are the first line of defense against crises, including serious mental illness. Second, citizens want you to do this. The recent city survey showed human and social services and affordable housing are the top 2 priorities. Third, good human and social services are essential for the success of the Unarmed Response Program. A successful crisis response program requires 3 elements. The first element is someone who answers the phone, can talk with empathy and insight, and make referrals appropriately. The second element is a response team to go to the caller if this is needed. The third element is service providers who can provide the care needed after the response team has stabilized the situation. Please remember this third element as well as the first 2 as you allocate ARPA funds. With regard to specific appropriations, I urge you to appropriate from ARPA funds at least $5 million for programs serving children and youth. The toll of the pandemic has been especially severe on children and young people. Second, at least $4.5 million for affordable and supportive housing, including supportive services. As you know, safe and secure housing is part of the basic foundation for a decent life. Third, at least $2 million for coordinated funding, which would be additional to a continuation of the general fund support. For details and additional funding recommendations, please go to the website of Citizens for Mental Health and Public Safety at a2mentalhealthvillage.com.
30
Thank
seconds.
you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bennett Stark.
Caller with the phone number ending in 417, you can press *6 to speak. Mr. Stark, phone number 417, press *6 to unmute your phone. Mayor, I believe the caller hung up.
Thank you. Had he been on the line prior?
He was on the line and I had given him permission to speak, but he's now hung up the phone.
Let's conclude that that's an error and we'll hold.
Mayor, I
Nothing?
do not see the caller on the line.
All right, if you'd be so kind to keep an eye on that, and if he calls back in, perhaps we'll, before too long, we'll bring him back. Are there communications from council? Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just apologize for being late. I had to come directly from work. So I just noticed that we have a representative of the arts community, distinguished member of our community here in the audience. I was wondering if you were here to speak. Oh, I can't see what's going on over there. Oh, we have two. Oh, I know that, it's normally a reserved time at the start, but I see these arts community stalwarts here, and I just wondered if they were here to speak, because there's no public hearings or anything related to what I know is one of their great, their great actions and loves here in the community. So if that was the case, I would certainly move under our rules to give them the floor if they wanted to for 3 minutes at our public hearing opportunity. But I'm not sure if that's why you're here. I just want to say hello. I know it's reserved time, but I believe our council rules allow a member of the audience to, with the affirmative vote of a majority of the council, to address for 3 minutes. And I would move to do that if they are interested in speaking.
So with that, so that's a motion to suspend the rules for the.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but it is in our council rules that members of the audience can approach in the lectern and be allowed to speak on any topic with the affirmative vote of a majority of council. I don't know the exact rule.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, okay.
First off, I don't think
didn't
that's
want to put you on the spot. I just.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll conclude my remarks by saying I'm fully in support of some of this ARPA funding going to the arts.
Councilmember Dish. I'm sorry, Councilmember Hayner, I cut you off. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I want to congratulate the Office of Sustainability and Innovations and the organization Live Zero Waste, which was founded by Ann Arbor natives Samuel and Lydia McMullen, because they had a very successful zero waste challenge. The challenge ran from February 6th to February 12th, and more than 500 people participated. They adopted new habits to reduce their trash and recycling, and they learned how to reduce their personal waste footprint. If you missed that week, or even if you didn't, there will be another resident race to zero from June 5 to 11. I also am very excited to say that the city has been accepted into a highly competitive program run through Next Cycle Michigan that will help the city identify, publicize, and attract consumers and investors to circular economy businesses. This is cutting-edge zero waste work and urgent equity work, And I want to recognize two very talented people who made it possible, John Callawart of the Environmental Commission and Jenny Petoskey, who is the city's outreach and compliance specialist in solid waste, and also to thank Dr. Misty Stultz for her indispensable support.
Councilmember Song.
I'll second kudos for John Calvert. He's actually my neighbor across the street from me, so wonderful. I just wanted to thank the city administrator's office in the work that's being done to engage the Police Oversight Commission and getting some discussions going. It looks like we have a good start in preparation for the police union contract, negotiating that in April. I've seen that how we're trying to see what kind of issues that ICPOC would like to have city staff cover and include, and we're looking forward to seeing those negotiations begin in a positive end. Thanks.
Councilmember Adina.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to draw some attention to an event that's coming up, also some good work that OSI is doing in partnership with Community Action Network. This Thursday from 6 to 7:30 at the Bryant Community Center, OSI and CAN will be having a Valentine-themed party with hot chocolate, pizza, games, and I know a fire truck will be there as well. And so just wanted to invite members of the community to come out and participate in this event.
Further communication from council. I'm sorry, Councilmember Griswold, you were on the queue and I omitted. Thank you. Councilmember Griswold.
A few quick things. First, I'd like to notify the public that the EPA has updated their website, and it's very easy to find. Just Google EPA Gelman. February, which is this month, they updated the website to say that they have selected a contractor, Weston Solutions, and they're working on a preliminary sampling plan. The sampling plan is scheduled to begin in May. So I just want to let people know that while the EPA process is a long process, work is beginning, and there'll actually be sampling starting in May. Number two, the last council meeting, we talked about the East Medical Center Drive Bridge. And I believe we lost an opportunity to increase pedestrian and cycling infrastructure with the resolution that we passed, but I am continuing to work on that with local activists as well as with Senator Irwin's office and Congressman Yusuf Rabi's office. And I think that some other council members are also working on that. We're at somewhat of a disadvantage because we don't want to violate the Open Meetings Act, but there is definitely concern. And it's very important that we define what our pedestrian and cycling infrastructure should look like 20 years from now based on our A20 plan, and make sure that we build for that. So thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
There was a meeting last week about part of Ward 4 near the new development at Valhalla. It's going to be called Arbor at Main. If anybody's interested in understanding how they're going to change, how the traffic is going to change a little bit over there, there's a redesigned median. I have a diagram on my website at a2lnow.com. It's they're extending the median to prevent U-turns and guide traffic going north that's trying to go left. At any rate, it was a good meeting, and that's going to be a little bit of an adjustment to Ward 4 on South Main. Thanks.
Further communication from council. I'll note there's a resolution for what I believe to be a consideration at our next meeting. Notice in the packet. I'd like to request confirmation of the following appointments that were presented to City Council for consideration at February 7, 2022, to the Building Board of Appeals, Kevin Cox; to the Ann Arbor Renters Commission, Liam Wolf, Kristen Cato, Lucy Peterson, Zechariah Farah, Arthur Redmond, Robert Kelly, and Hannah Cohen-Smith. May I have a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Radina, seconded by Councilmember Nelson. Discussion? Councilmember Hayner.
I'm just going to vote in opposition to these appointments broadly, but just to say that there's been I don't know, for the last 20 years or so, I recall, of appointments being made in a certain way that it's folks that are politically motivated, politically active, and sometimes politically bullies. And there's some of those in these rounds of appointments, and I'm not going to support it. We can't. There's so many people in our community that are willing to serve. I can't believe that we can't find folks who aren't out there, picking on members of the community, making them feel unsafe, cyberbullying, and so on. And we have that in some of these appointments. We've had many of them this year, and I'm unhappy with that, and so I'm not going to support this.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Iyer.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner?
No.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Redina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I'd like to recommend nomination of the following appointment for your consideration to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Christopher Madigan. We have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Redina, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the consent agenda. Councilmember Redina. For the discussion, Councilmember Griswold.
I'd like to pull CA6.
For the discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA3 and CA6. I'm sorry, Councilmember Nelson, did you have something?
Oh, sorry.
No worries. All in favor of the consent agenda with the exception of CA3 and CA6, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda with the exception of CA3, CA6 is approved with 11 council members present, all voting in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote majority with respect to CA17, CA18. CA3, resolution to award a construction contract to E.T. McKenzie Company for the Third and Mosley Water Main and Resurfacing Project. Moved by Councilmember Redina, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of CA3. Councilmember Redina.
I believe there should be a staff introduction, actually.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Mr. Mahoney?
Yes, Mayor. For CA3, Mr. Nick Hutchinson is available to answer questions.
Hi, this is Nick Hutchinson, city engineer. We had some questions that came in late that I'm going to address here. First of all, one thing I want to say up front is that this contract, along with a couple more that we'll have coming forward in the next month or so, were let under the old procurement system. They were issued in December before the changes to city code went into effect. So they are still the last vestiges of the old procurement system that are working through the system right now. To address the questions that came in, first question, does E.T. McKenzie participate in a registered apprenticeship program? The answer is no. If not, do we know how the bidder assesses the skills and qualifications of employees? In response to that question, the contractor provided information that is found on page 123 of their submittal. I don't have time to read through that whole thing right now, but I will direct you towards page 123 of that attachment. Do we know the percentage of bidders' workforce for this project are area residents? Yes, we do. That's on page 15 of their submittal. It is 0.5% City of Ann Arbor residents and 1.7% Washington County. The fourth question we had, given recent issues with water main projects in the city, are we aware of any quality assurance programs used by the bidder? First of all, I wanted to clarify that we haven't really had any issues with water main projects in the past, in recent years. We did have some sanitary issues, but that's a different contractor and a different type of work. For this submittal specifically, McKenzie submitted a quality control plan which begins on page 128 of their submittal. However, it is for concrete work only, so it doesn't cover all of the work that they would be doing. And finally, the last question, are we aware of any safety or environmental violations incurred by the bidder that may be relevant to this project, and do we gather this information for all bids? The contractor submitted a list of OSHA safety citations over the past 5 years, which is shown on page 65 of their submittal. These items there are only a few items on this list, and they appear relatively minor in nature. Also, engineering staff is not aware of any environmental violations by McKenzie, and we have worked with them, this contractor, on multiple occasions over the past few years, and have not encountered any such issues. And then finally, that information is gathered for all bids. Thank you.
Those questions that were submitted, introduced by staff, I have Councilmember Adina on the queue.
I'm all set for right now.
Further discussion? Do you have anything?
I guess I can say a little bit more. I am planning to vote against this one. I think we had a couple of contracts that were relatively close to one another based on some of the answers that I received to these and some of my concerns. I'm just more comfortable. I would like for us to move forward with this under our new proposal, particularly since there were a couple of folks that were pretty close in the bid here, and I think that these are not necessarily the values that we want in a contractor.
Councilmember Amlawi.
I'm a bit concerned with this not being approved here tonight. As we know, we have hundreds of old water lines that need to be replaced in our community, hundreds of miles. And this is in the 5th Ward. I guess my question to staff is, what does this do to this project if it was not to be supported here tonight? Will this project become delayed? And if so, how long?
If the intent is to rebid the project, then let's see, we would, if we could put it out to bid very quickly here, mid-March, we would probably be looking at probably an April bid opening, which would be relatively late. We probably wouldn't get back to council until May. We would probably still have time to build the project this year. We are sensitive to schedule in this neighborhood. The 3rd Mosley area is very close to the football stadium, and we would want to make sure that that work is done by the end of August. So it makes our time frame a bit tighter. Also, with a later bid letting, I would expect that we would see higher bid prices as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're correct. Inflationary pressures are upon us. I really have an issue with us micromanaging at the table when these contracts come up. And I don't think this is the time to start doing those things. I think many of us were chastised prior of micromanaging staff, and we've gotten legal advice regarding this contract and what would have to occur if we were to reject it. And this puts in jeopardy a significant infrastructure improvement project in my ward. And that's the last thing I want to see. I'd like to see this work get done, and this work get done this year.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I'm also going to be voting against this contract. We knew that there were going to be contracts that would continue to come under the old system. I think it's important for us to, now that we've passed the new ordinance and, voters supported it by a margin of, 77%. They supported this direction. I think it's important that we do what we can to make the best of the contracts that are coming in under the old system until we start seeing contracts that have been bid out under the new system. And so that's what I see we're doing here. This is a large contract. This is a lot of money that we're spending. And we heard very loud and clear from residents that they didn't want us to just go with the cheapest bidder. They wanted us to evaluate quality, safety, job performance, on a whole range of issues to ensure that we are getting the best value for our money. I have serious concerns about this contractor. There are 4 serious OSHA violations by this contractor in the past few years, and just so people understand what that means, a serious violation means that there was a substantial probability that workplace hazards could cause an incident likely to result in death or serious injury, and that the employer knew or should have known and did nothing to address it. So that, coupled with the fact that they do not participate in a registered apprenticeship program, we have really no knowledge of how people are trained and assessed at this company. I just cannot, in good faith, vote for spending this amount of taxpayer money to a company with these credentials. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
I'm going to vote to support this. The rules haven't taken, this new change hasn't happened yet. This made it in under the wire. I'm not going to disparage this contractor. I don't know enough about them personally. I haven't been on their sites. I haven't seen it with my own eyes. I think there'll be plenty of time in the next 2-3 years to shower favors on your union supporters. You can do it then, I'm going to vote for this. Let's get these roads repaired and these water mains replaced.
Councilmember Radina.
Thanks, Mayor. Councilmember Iyer summarized a number of the things I wanted to say, but I think that, I wanted to clarify, I think it's really important to highlight, I think we all want this project to get done. I think we also want it to make sure that it gets done well. It's not just about the speed, but also the quality with which some of these projects are happening. And we do have a mandate from the residents telling us the types of ways that they want us to evaluate these contracts. And in particular, I just don't think that this is one that we should feel comfortable moving forward with, knowing what we know and knowing what the voters of Ann Arbor have asked of us. And so, again, I'm not gonna support this one tonight. And we've heard that it is likely that we'll still be able to get this done this year, and we'll just do it with a better system.
Councilmember Amlawi.
With 14% turnout in the special election, I hardly call that a mandate. We are seeing double-digit inflation monthly. If you're concerned about city tax dollars, I'd urge you to vote yes on this, because your next contract is guaranteed to be larger. We cannot claw back work that's already been done and approved. City staff has come out and said tonight, minor violations. There is just some exaggeration occurring to make political statements, perhaps. This is in the 5th Ward. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Prices are going up. We need to act, and we need to get things done. There's nothing significant here that's going to change other than the price if we put this back out to bid right now.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I want to reiterate some of what Councilmember Ramlawi pointed out, which is that there's no new information that council is now considering that would alter the decision-making process that staff already went through. So what's happening now is we're basically like second-guessing a long process that staff has already gone through. And while it is true that we have changed the rules and moving forward we are implementing a higher standard, I hardly believe that when people voted for this change, they anticipated that we were going to pay a huge premium to move to retroactively change our rules for the handful of contracts that are remaining under the old system. I feel really uncomfortable voting against this, knowing that it's an infrastructure project that really needs to be done and hearing that the costs are likely to increase. I do have one question. I feel like Mr. Hutchins answered the question of the kind of delay if we were to rebid the project. one of the options that was presented to us was to apply the lowest responsible bidder criteria and find reason to award the contract to somebody else based on that standard. And I guess I'm curious if you have any ideas about how we might do that.
I think that may be more of a legal question than a question for me. Tim, do you want to field that?
It would be a decision by council, and they would have council would have to identify a basis on which to reject the recommendation that's been presented to council.
Okay. I mean, I guess
my reason. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I guess my question, since the implication was that staff would perhaps find that reason, I was asking Mr. Hutchins if staff had reviewed this, and well, perhaps they haven't. I think it's probably obvious that they haven't. But thank you for your help.
Councilmember Briggs.
I think the new policy that voters adopted is a sound one that we need to be moving forward with. I'm struggling with this contract being brought to the table tonight with sort of questions. There weren't agenda questions put forward. This is the first time we're hearing about it. We're being asked to vote against this tonight based on very limited information about a really important infrastructure project in the 5th Ward. So I do think that it's important that, we as council identify if there's issues and bring them forward in a timely basis so that we can actually make informed decisions around this. I would consider, since some issues have been raised, postponing this for a meeting to be able to consider it and weigh in some more information, get some more information from staff, and kind of deliberate about this appropriately at our next meeting.
Is that a motion to postpone, Councilmember?
I do, but I think I see a
To our
question
next
over there.
meeting?
But
Seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of the postponement. Councilmember Hayner.
If this contractor is so poor that we shouldn't allow them this project, then why did we vote unanimously to allow them CA4 and award a contract for the compost pad replacement to the very same contractor? So I'm not going to support a postponement.
Further discussion of the postponement. Councilmember Hayner, Ramlawi.
Again, if anyone's listened to the news or tried to buy anything recently, you know that costs are only going up. In fact, the bridge on East Medical Center Drive, while council was kicking that around for 5 months, price of that went up nearly $1 million. So this is not good government. I don't know what's going on here, but contracts that come to this table and then at the last minute get postponed and reworked and reworded. I didn't think that was this. I didn't think that this body was supposed to be doing at this table at this hour. That's what staff was supposed to be doing. That's what our competent staff and our legal department, engineering, and others. We're policy setters. 30,000 feet. I mean, this is bad government. You guys are costing taxpayers a lot of money. You're delaying critical infrastructure. You're wasting staff time. That's what's happening here.
Councilmember Song on the postponement.
I'm worried about the issues being raised tonight, particularly if it means that there's considerable safety concerns. I would think that if we would engage a contractor who doesn't prioritize safety and have serious OSHA violations as being something that we should be collectively concerned about over cost savings. I don't know if you can really put a dollar to putting people in that kind of environment using our tax dollars. If that can be confirmed, I would support this vote for. If we can get additional information on this that can be confirmed by staff, I'd be in support of the postponement.
On the postponement, Councilmember Grand.
Thank you. I'll be voting for the postponement, Councilmember Briggs.
beat me to it, I think, by one council member. So this is a real struggle because it is critical infrastructure, but at the same time, it is critical infrastructure and not just a road. I mean, we're talking about the entire infrastructure underneath the road, and we really do. That's a 80, 100-year project. We want to make sure that we're getting it right. So I'm pretty comfortable postponing, and I think when we're in a period of transition, there are going to be some inevitable bumps along the way. This is not to criticize staff at all. They were working under, prior rules, and as we make that transition, and it was confirmed by a very significant portion of the voters who showed up that day, which is all we can work with. And so I'll be happy to support this. I also hope that going forward that we don't use that something is in our ward as a reason just to support it or deny it. I don't think that's terrific policymaking. So if this keeps us from having to go out and rebid, I think 2 weeks is a good use of our time.
We've got Councilmember Griswold and Dish, and let me suggest that people know what they're going to do on the postponement, and then we just move on with a fair bit of brevity. Councilmember Griswold, you have the floor.
Yes, on the postponement, I have a question for Nick Hutchinson.
Go ahead.
Yes, I've seen this contractor listed many times in agendas in the past, and I'm just wondering, do you have any reservation working with this contractor, or have you had any negative results from their work in the past?
No, I have not. I don't have, and I do not have any reservations working with them.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Dish.
I just wanted to ask, do we have specific questions that we want staff to come back with responses to in the interim so that the postponement is serving an informational function? And maybe we don't know what those are at this moment, but will someone take responsibility for that? Yeah.
Yes. Further discussion of the postponement. Councilmember Rumlawi.
I won't be favoring the postponement. I think those questions should have been asked prior to this meeting. I'm disappointed. We keep seeing these contracts again keep coming up here with questions last minute, been kicked around, brought back, and either approved or come back with a bigger price tag. I wouldn't think our staff would bring forward a contractor who's in violation of OSHA violations. There's been aspersions being made that this contractor is not responsible and that they shouldn't be allowed to work because of OSHA violations. Well, staff recently said there was minor violations. This contractor has been awarded dozens of contracts in the last year or two. So this is just a troubling pattern going on here. And I hope the community is awake, listening, and following.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thanks. Yes, I'll go ahead and support the postponement. A couple points that I just wanted to make sure I address before we move on. One is, the OSHA violations, anyone can look them up. There's a public database that anyone can access. So, you're free to check work. The point about the violations, I mean, it's, there are often, violations that are found, but this particular contractor had twice as many as the next lowest bidder. And the next lowest bidder also much more closely fits our best value criteria. And, again, I'll say, I think that's, the 77% of voters who supported best value contracting are expecting to get that. And, it's troubling that that people want to downplay that vote. So I just want to make a quick point that more than 14,000 people voted yes for best value contracting. Most of us at this table, all of us at this table, save the mayor, were voted in with much smaller numbers, including Councilmember Ramlawi, who got 41,092 in his Democratic primary. I'm sorry, 4,192. There we go. So, I just think it's important for us to keep that in mind. If the best value contracting isn't a mandate by voters, then nobody sitting here has a mandate. Thanks.
On the postponement, Councilmember Griswold.
I don't know if we have an attorney present right now, but it seems like this conversation has violated some of the recommendations that came in our attorney-client privilege communication today. And I'm troubled by that because bidding processes can result in lawsuits. So I hope that there is a lawyer at least watching what's happening and can intervene as necessary.
Further discussion?
Remember, you always have a lawyer present, and Mr. Wilhelm is here also. We are on the screens.
Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Iyer.
This is on the postponement.
Pardon me. Thank you for asking. Thank you for reminding me. This is on the postponement to our next meeting. Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
No.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramlawi?
No.
Councilmember Hayner?
No.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
No.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Radina?
No.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries.
CA6, resolution to approve the professional services agreement with AECom Great Lakes, Inc. for the water treatment plant facility plan 2022 in the amount of $5,060,239.80. Moved by Councilmember Griswold, second by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of CA6, Councilmember Griswold.
Yes, I just want to point out within this resolution, there is a resolve clause to move forward with the renovation of the water treatment facility. And previously, council had been told that we would be getting two resolutions, one to go with water treatment plant renovation, upgrade, whatever, and the other one was to hook up to what's known as the Detroit water system. I just wanted to clarify that with passing CA6, we are making a decision not to ask staff to give us a resolution for a hookup to the Detroit water system, and that would be consistent with the resolution passed by the Environmental Commission a few months ago to definitely go with renovations.
Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, I want to thank Councilwoman Griswold for pointing that out, and I agree, and I'm pleased to see this. I believe that water autonomy is critical for our city, and where our folks do a good job, they do the best they can with what they're given from upstream. And obviously, I'd like to see our legal department dig in a little more to shutting down some of that upstream pollution, because we're bound to our groundwater resources here and surface water resources. So it's a big chunk of change, $5 million to get the facility plan together, but not considering $110 million renovation, it isn't. And so I'm glad this is moving forward.
Further discussion? For my part, I'm delighted that this is moving forward. Indeed, as we all know, water is fundamental to what we do here at the city. We have for years been we've been planning to effect a substantial renovation of the water treatment plant. We've been adjusting rates of ratepayers, users of the system for the purpose. And we also have regulations and contaminants that are novel that we are obligated and proud to address. the modification, the improvement of the water treatment plant will allow us to do so, and it's necessary for Ann Arbor's future. Further, thank you, Councilmember Griswold.
I just want to point out that last week, Scioto Township had a town hall meeting regarding the Gelman plume and cleanup efforts, and there were experts from federal government, state government, county, townships. And one thing came up, they had questions about the Ann Arbor water supply, and we didn't have an Ann Arbor expert there, and I wouldn't have thought we needed one. But some of the Scioto Township residents are actually on the Ann Arbor water system. So when we make these decisions, it's a decision greater than just the city of Ann Arbor.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Iyer. I'm sorry, further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. We now come to a public hearing. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about the specific subject matter of the public meeting. That is the specific item on the agenda to which the public hearing relates. Speakers need not have signed up in advance. In order to speak at a public hearing via Zoom, please enter the number on your screen, 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you're connected, please enter *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. Our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number when it is your turn to speak. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time is expired. When your time is expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, resolution to approve the Rothfuss annexation, 1.49 acres, 3090 Geddes Road. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't have any callers on the line with their hands up.
Thank you. Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. We have before us the regular session meeting minutes of February 7, 2022. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Song, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? The minutes are approved. C1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 18, Employee Retirement System, Section 1605, Title 1 of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor to allow forfeitures to cover reasonable administrative expenses. Moved by Councilmember Amlawi, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of C1. Councilmember Hayner.
I'm going to vote to move this along because this is the first reading, but anytime you see the word forfeitures involved with city government, it should make your eyes open up, and I encourage everyone to take a look at this before it comes back to us for second reading and get your questions in order.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. DB1, resolution to approve the Rothfuss annexation, 1.49 acres, 3090 Geddes Road. Moved by Councilmember Griswold, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DB1. All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. DC1, resolution to appoint non-registered electors to the Ann Arbor Renters Commission. Moved by Councilmember Medina, second by Councilmember Rumlawi. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks. I just wanted to comment on this. When this Renters Commission was formed, I was of the mind that in order for it to achieve whatever goals it sets for itself and whatever changes it feels are appropriate in our community, that it should be made up of in part of all those who have a stake in the rental structure, and that would have included commercial renters and owners of property, and none of those things are represented on this board as far as I can tell. And so now that we're reaching outside of the community to folks who aren't registered electors, either because they're students, they haven't transferred their I don't know all the reasons. I know some of them live outside of the city, which is why they're not registered electors. I wonder if after this Renters Commission goes on for a bit, if they should consider expansion of it to consider the, the regional need for, potential rent reform or examination of our rental practices and policies and zoning and everything else. Because that's kind of what we're doing here when we're bringing in people from other communities. We're kind of tacitly recognizing that there's expertise outside of our community. And so, I mean, this is going to pass. These people are going to get appointed, but I just wanted to comment on that. I don't think this commission is fully formed in totally geared up for success.
Councilmember Medina.
Thanks, Mayor. First, I just want to thank all of the members of the community who applied to the commission. We had a number of applicants who obviously we only have 10 spots, so we had a number of incredibly qualified applicants who did not initially get appointed, but I think that there will obviously be ways that folks can continue to stay involved in the conversation. And I just, partially in attempting to answer some of Councilmember Hayner's comments there, I know that the initial intention in some of the renters' perspectives that were specifically called out in the initial resolution forming this were very focused on residential renters, so folks of varying renters' perspectives in that regard. There was not commercial renter perspective in that piece informing this. I would say that I think there is a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done in terms of the housing aspects that this board will work on. And if at some point, in the future when those issues are resolved, that we look at the continued makeup of the commission, I think that's a conversation to be had in the future, but I think there's a lot of work to be done right now. There is only, to the specific resolution here, only one of the individuals below is not an Ann Arbor resident. One of them specifically is an international student who is transitioning onto a work visa. Another is also, I believe, international, non-citizen at least. I don't know. I guess I don't know that she was an international student. Both of whom live in Ann Arbor. The third individual, who lives in Ypsilanti, brought a number of incredibly important perspectives to the board. I believe the only formerly incarcerated applicant, an individual who, I think one of the reasons why that perspective is important is somebody who works in Ann Arbor but can't afford to live in Ann Arbor. And so bringing that perspective to the table as well is, I think, really important. So I am really happy with the applicants. I know that there's a lot of work to do, and I look forward to the work ahead.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Iyer.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Ramlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries.
DC2, resolution to appoint Bridget Gruber and Sarah Niedrich to the Environmental Commission, moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Griswold.
I want to thank everyone who applied for this position. I want to acknowledge that we did have some irregularities, and we are committed to improving the process. We've already talked about that. One of the things would be to have a pool of potential candidates, so when there is an opening, we don't go so long without a full commission, because the Environmental Commission is doing very important work. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. DC3, resolution requesting a legal opinion to provide guidance for City Council to address the perceived discrepancies in Attorney Jennifer Salvatore's report of confidential investigation of December 7, 2021. Moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion, please, of DC3. Councilmember Griswold.
Yeah, this is really just asking for a legal opinion, given that I've had constituents come forward and ask me questions, and so I am asking the city attorney's office, which I believe is the attorney for city council, for some direction on this. And just as an aside, I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and I carefully followed the work of Dr. Hannah Atisha. And the lag time that it took for her to get recognition and an improvement plan in place for the lead in the water in Flint, Michigan, and the time that occurred where additional damage was done to children because of not taking quicker action. So in all cases, I try to advocate not only for truth, but also for quick resolution when we do have a potential problem. Thank you.
Councilmember Grand.
Thank you. I'll clearly be voting no, just like I voted no last time. I hope that this is the last discussion that we have about this at our table. It's been frustrating, especially when we hear this compared to children being poisoned by lead in their water. I'm pretty confident in saying that no children were harmed in the work of this report. And am just comfortable taking advice from our own attorneys, and for those in the community that are attorneys who wish to give advice, that's fine, but they're not our attorneys, and I don't intend to treat them as such. Thanks.
Further discussion, Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, so, council rules are rarely followed. I'd say maybe it's 50-50. And if one had the time to waste reading social media and other things, fortunately I don't. We'd find all kinds of violations, even at this very table of new rules that we've made, especially Rule 10, where things are characterized and motives are assigned and so on. And we don't have a choice under our council rules. If we want the city attorney to write something up and answer some of our questions, it has to come to the whole body. That's all we're asking for here. We want an opinion on something, and we have to bring it to the body. That's it. And if the rest of my colleagues, supposed colleagues here, aren't willing to ask our attorney to do that, I don't know what to say. All we're doing is following the rules here. We want an opinion from our attorney about questions that have been presented to us. That's all it is.
Further discussion. Councilmember Griswold.
Well, I believe we did receive a communication at 6:15 today, but I haven't had a chance to read that yet. So I don't know if that is an opinion that would allow us to go into closed session, or if that's an opinion telling us not to pursue this anymore. So could I get clarification from the city attorney on just a summary of what direction the communication recommended? Or is that confidential?
No, I provided just some information on this. The resolution that you have, and Councilmember Hayner is correct. You're asking for a public opinion on something that is certainly your right, and I provided some information on that. That's all. So you could read it and decide for yourself.
Okay, and I'd like to read something into the public record, and that is the Salvatore invoice 11/29/2001. Call with Deputy City Attorney 12/3/2001. Call with City Attorney regarding follow-up report and review of notes 12/6. Call with Stephen Postema and final review of follow-up report 12/7. Final edits to follow-up report, call with city attorney. That indicates to me that the city attorney or someone in their office was involved in the final report and had every opportunity to identify some of the information that may be incorrect. I'm being very generous here. We definitely know that statements were made regarding severance packages that are not supported by the contracts. So I'm just somewhat surprised that our city attorney's office, given their involvement, didn't catch some of these errors previously, and they don't want to address these errors now. Thank you.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I would encourage Councilmember Griswold to read the memo from the city attorney, and I guess I can't say anything further on that, but I will, of course, be voting against this. This is a waste of our time. This is not what we should be up here doing. It's political theater, and let's just move on.
Further discussion? Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah. If by political theater you mean it's a pointless and empty gesture, I'm going to take offense with that under Rule 10. There's no political theater here. We're asking for an opinion. Does it look like we're on stage? I ain't wearing stage makeup. This is not theater. This is asking our attorney for an opinion. That can be made public. The only way to do it is to bring it before this body. You guys are so bent out of shape about that. Vote no. But don't call us names and don't impugn your council members. You brought the rule. Our mayor chooses not to enforce it. Operate under your own rules. Operate under our rules, please.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
It's unfortunate we find ourselves again discussing these flawed reports. It's unfortunate that this council is going to rubber stamp these reports. Anybody who takes the time to read them, fact check, and look through it with an objective eye will know that these things lack credibility, consistency, and undermine this own body's credibility and that of the city attorney's office. That's what you get, taxpayers of Ann Arbor, all bought and paid for by your money.
Councilor Delson.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate, because there's sort of a very aggressive and ongoing reframing of issues to something that they aren't. It's clear that we have a city attorney, which is why a resolution like this is put on an agenda, to make use of the city attorney that we have. This is going to be the second time that I remember, but it may be more than the second time, that this body has resisted and simply rejected the idea of considering an issue thoughtfully. I'm intrigued by that as an approach to any issue before us. This particular resolution is giving our own city attorney an opportunity to refute the critiques that have been offered, the multiple critiques from a few attorneys in our community. And the idea that this body wouldn't want to give him that opportunity, and that our city attorney himself doesn't want to take that opportunity and has chosen not to, is alarming to me. In the 3 years that I have been on this body, we've gotten quite a few legal memos that were not specifically asked for, that were voluntarily given on issues, offering positions and opinions that our city attorney felt were important for us to know. We have several members of our community who have raised concerns that they believe are important, and we are asking our city attorney, this resolution is asking our city attorney to settle the matter for us. And the resistance at this table, the resistance from our city attorney's office, should be concerning to everyone. Thank you.
Councilmember Briggs.
So we have spent a lot of time over the last couple of meetings talking about this at the table. This is questionably a good use of council time. And certainly when we're asking our city attorney's office to invest additional time in something, I think it's prudent that we make sure that that's a good use of their time. We have received communications about this from our city attorney's office. We have the opportunity to speak with the city attorney's office staff on a weekly basis. They have open office hours. I've certainly taken advantage of that to get my questions answered. But in terms of thinking about whether this is useful to spend more time on, there has to be a credible reason to do that. That hasn't been presented, and we certainly have communications from our city attorney's office on this. I'll be voting no.
Further discussion? I'm sorry, Councilmember Saul.
So earlier this evening, we were, there's some language that was shared around processes and second-guessing processes and second-guessing work that staff has already gone through, how things get kicked around and brought back. I have not received a single inquiry in my ward around this issue, if it is really an issue. I feel, we've got staff who's worked on this, has presented feedback on this numerous occasions. When we ask our city attorneys to work on this, on a particular issue, it means negotiating time on other projects and other issues. That's what I'm thinking about when I vote against this right now, because I think that there are some more pressing issues in the city that our staff attorneys, or our city attorney's office is working on while in transition. It's certainly not a priority in the folks that I talk to, and I'd like to see that this matters be settled. Thanks.
Further discussion? I will be voting against the resolution, as has been identified just a few moments ago. The city attorney's office works very closely with this particular external investigator to ensure that the report that they deliver to us is accurate factually. The city attorney does not address, of course, the investigator's own conclusions, interpretation of those facts, but with respect to the facts themselves, naturally the city attorney is in close collaboration with external investigators to ensure that the document that we receive is accurate. It's my belief that this document is indeed entirely accurate, that there are no discrepancies within it, and that stands for the various investigations up and down the line that has been provided to us by Attorney Salvatore. Her work is, of course, excellent. Her work is thorough. What we see here is is the tip of the iceberg with respect to the facts that she has gathered. We have trusted her, and my belief that trust was well placed. For these various reasons, I will be voting against the resolution. Further discussion. Councilmember Ramlawi.
Again, I think in the end, the truth will come out. And I disagree with your assessment of this investigation. I feel if I was so confident as the majority of this body feels of these investigations and reports, that they have no problem supporting this resolution here tonight. If you're so sure about the facts, and you're so sure about the accuracy, then go ahead. What does this take? A few hours? This is not a big dig. This is not a heavy lift. The lack of transparency that has been ushered in 2020 should concern the residents of this city greatly. There is an iron curtain. There's a council minority and a council majority. And there's 4 council members here that don't get treated and don't have the access to resources that the rest of them do. And it all depends on where you lie on the political spectrum in the donation list. So if I was so sure about the facts, I'd support this. You're so sure about how great this report is, support it. Put some daylight on it. I don't think you all are so sure. You just want this to be buried. It's a political hit job. This whole thing was a political hit job.
Got Councilmember Grand, Briggs, and Radina.
Thank you. I want to go back to a little history of some of these investigative reports, which I believe Councilmember Nelson called them a political weapon. Well, I don't think it was a weapon when she wanted an investigative report into former Administrator Lazarus. It just didn't come out the way that some of you wanted it to. Now, if I could actually, I'm going to keep speaking. Thank you.
Okay, point of order.
Councilmember, what is your point of order?
My point of order is that we are rehashing irrelevant history.
Councilmember,
here.
that is not a
This
point of
is
order.
simply asking for a legal opinion.
Councilmember, that does not give rise to a point of order.
In terms of daylighting a report, the report was released. There's nothing left to daylight. Council released the report in its entirety. So done. Just because some people who would like to be our city attorney and clearly have some council members' ears more than their own attorneys, doesn't mean that we have to get in line with their wishes. Finally, Councilmember Romlawi, because you seem to be doing it the most, please stop insinuating that we are bought and paid for. You've made that accusation more than once this evening. It's insulting to our integrity. It's insulting to the work that we do for our community. Every time you make a decision that I disagree with, I don't accuse you of being bought and paid for. It's ridiculous. We're allowed to have agreements without conspiracy theories and being told that we're bought. I'm sick of it. It's ridiculous. It's childish, and it's not conducive to our getting our work done. You have good ideas. We support them. I sat here at this table while you beat your chest while you were part of the new council majority and there's a new sheriff in town.
Can we speak? Can we speak to the topic, please? Can we speak to the matter before us, Mr. Mayor?
Council members, please stop interrupting the council member.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Absolutely not. Council member, she has the floor.
She can speak to the matter before us.
Council member. Council member.
I'm not going to take these racist
Council member.
It is racist.
Council member.
You're racist.
Council
Beating
member.
my chest?
Council member.
Fine, I'll rephrase.
Council member.
Well, you bragged about being the new sheriff in town as part of a new council majority. I listened to it, and as soon as the tables were turned, I've been listening for the last number of years to your making yourself the victim. It's ridiculous. Just have good ideas, we'll support it. But stop accusing us of having intentions that are not in the best interest of the people that we represent in this city, just because you don't get your way.
Would you please enforce the council rules, Mr. Mayor?
Council member, I've enforced the council rules.
By giving the Mayor Pro Tem a platform to berate a colleague and not speak to the topic before us. The rules are clear.
Council member.
It is actually on the topic.
It is on the topic, and I give you a fair bit of latitude. I give Councilmember Romlawi a fair bit of latitude. In fact, I give most council members here a fair bit of latitude about talking about what they think is germane to the topic. If you're looking to have me talk about matters of relevance and to with consistency crack down on people who are more discursive than other council members, I'm willing to do that.
Please
but
do.
I don't think I'm going
Please
to.
do.
I don't think I'm
asking
going
you
to at your particular request.
Please do.
Council member. Got Council member Briggs.
I pass.
Further discussion. Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Iyer.
Councilmember Iyer?
No.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
No.
Councilmember Romlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
No.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
No.
Councilmember Grand?
No.
Councilmember Medina?
No.
Mayor Taylor?
No.
Motion fails.
DC 4, resolution urging Michigan legislature to amend the Michigan No-Fault Auto Insurance Reform Act of 2019, moved by Councilmember Nelson, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC 4. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about it, but then I'm going to table it. So this is some changes to no-fault auto insurance that were made at the state level and were implemented last summer. The Commission on Disability Issues is very interested in this. Caps on reimbursements for catastrophic injuries, are having a huge impact on people who need care after a terrible, terrible accident. I had a long conversation this morning with our state rep, Yusuf Rabi, and I collaborated with our chair of our commission because this resolution actually passed unanimously at the Commission on Disabilities Issues last week. But I'm told that Representative Rabi is working on a bill that will hopefully be presented in the next month or so that will be a more complete solution to some of the problems that have been made apparent in this these changes to the insurance policy. So at any rate, I will be tabling this, and I am hopeful that a stronger version of it will be coming to this table soon. So it's still a good idea, but we are going to make it better. So I move to table this.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Bardina. My recollection, we don't table very often, is that tabling requires an 8-vote majority but is not subject to debate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Iyer.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Romlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Do we have a closed session today, Mr. Postma?
Mayor, we do not, nor do I have any communications later, so I'll get right to that.
Well, it is I won't call you out of order in light of your expiration date, but we'll take it from there. May we have before us the clerk's report of communications, petitions, and referrals. May I have a motion, please, to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Dish, second by Councilmember Grand. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Clerk's report is approved. We now, assuming that the city attorney continues to have no communication, we'll now move on to public comment. We come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. To speak at public comment general time, please enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you're connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you're connected, please enter *9, *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. Our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number when it is your turn to speak. You will have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Is there anyone who would like to speak at public comment?
Caller with the phone number ending in 556. Press *6 to unmute your phone. Caller 556, do you have a comment?
Hello, this is Ralph McKee. Since the critiques that I did have spurred some controversy, I would like to just address the body as to them. I have just a quick comment for Councilmember Grand. I have no interest at all in being the city attorney. I'm happily retired, and maybe I have too much time on my hands, you might think. I really don't. Actually, I'd like to use it in more productive ways. But I think actually having critiques done in the long run is a good thing because it would promote an improved and better product. That's really all I'm trying to do here. These reports, they have clear errors. I'll just give one tonight because I've mentioned these many times, but her last report says that John Fournier is in the defined benefit plan, and she uses that as a premise for a discrimination claim. He's in the defined contribution plan. Read the contract. This is essentially saying that these reports have 0 errors. It is roughly equivalent to saying that January 6th wasn't an insurrection or the sky is green. You can be in denial all you want, but the fact is there are some errors. You can rationally argue about whether the conclusions were correct. You cannot rationally argue that there are not errors. Pure and simple. You're just in denial, and I would expect in a in a normal world, we would have a shared reality where facts are facts. We don't have that here. And I have heard none of you or the city attorney address those very simple, basic points, which I don't want to be pejorative, but they are simple. And to simply avoid them and say, well, there's no errors because we say so, is kind of like elementary school. And we really shouldn't be there. All you have to do is take a look at some of the pieces and make a coherent argument if you want. There's plenty of decent arguments on the other side of the critiques, but to just stand there and say over and over again, there aren't any errors because we say so.
30 seconds.
Is just not a legitimate method of argument. And thank you. Give that some thought. Bye.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 534, do you have a comment?
Hello, this is Tom Stalbert calling from Lowertown. Mayor Taylor, you sent out a campaign letter condemning hate. You used the word abhorrent. I agree. Anti-Semitism is abhorrent. I'm Jewish. Hate is abhorrent. Using this issue for your political gain, for your campaign, is abhorrent. You say that you condemn the choice of these people to direct hate, and you call upon them to relent and disband. Well, I abhor you turning this, a very serious issue like this, into your political theater. Shame on you. Look in the mirror. Look at the amount of hate spewed on a regular basis by your base, by your supporters. You've been asked multiple times, for years now, to deal with the hate from your supporters. You remain silent about that. It isn't going away with your silence. You could call on them to condemn their choice of the hate that they direct. You could call on them, your supporters, your base, to relent and to disband. So this is Mayor Taylor's Ann Arbor, a place where hate has a home, where innocent people's causes, legitimate causes, are hijacked for your political theater, for your mayoral reelection campaign. How long have the protests been going on? Right now, with all the hate that you inspire and permit from your supporters, you're going to use anti-Semitism and hijack that for your campaign? Shame on you. Good night.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't see any other callers with their hands up. Caller with the phone number ending in 618, do you have a comment? Press *6 to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Michelle Hughes, and one thing I'm disappointed that I didn't hear tonight was a call to reconsider the vote on East Medical Center Drive. That was a mistake. It's a mistake that's going to be permanent, and we need to be aggressively supporting our 820 goals, and one of those goals was to reduce vehicle miles traveled by 50%, and we have 8 years to do that. This is not the time to be adding lanes of traffic on any road in the city, no matter what building it's adjacent to. That area is an important place for pedestrians, and we need to see it treated that way. and we need to see pedestrians' lives not being endangered by increased traffic. I'm hoping as well, like the call to increase the traffic lanes there ended up with no additional space for pedestrians. And I've heard an idea floated that at least we could reapportion that same space better by not narrowing the sidewalk on the hospital side where the pedestrians want to walk. I hope that at least something like that happens. I hope there's some way to do that, even though it didn't get reconsidered tonight. But I would definitely prefer instead to see the sidewalks widened and the pedestrian and cycling facilities be expanded rather than the car facilities. And I hope it's not too late to do that. So find a way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex Lowe, do you have a comment?
Hi, this is Alex Lowe, and I'm just wanting to re-echo what Michelle said. I find this desire by the university specifically to increase the car traffic at an expense of people who are trying to walk and bike there really quite myopic, and I really hope that to see council reconsider this.
Thank you.
Mayor, I don't see any other callers with their hands up.
Seeing no one further, public comment is closed. Are there communications from council? Councilmember Song.
I had a really good discussion with County Commissioner Andy Labar earlier this morning, and it sounds like there was, as a result of a considerable amount of advocacy by him and a number of community members in regards to the child care situation in the city and in the area, in the county, they've been able to land a tri-share grant, which would help pay for child care in the area. So that essentially is a model where employers will pay for a third, a public entity like the county will pay for a third, and the individual parent will pay for a third of child care. So this has been a longstanding issue in the community. It's been a longstanding issue before the pandemic, and it's nice to see some movement in this area beyond the $2 million that the county had already allocated for strategic planning. And it will provide considerable relief for families who are really struggling for the costs and trying to find any child care providers who, if they're still in business, kudos to them. It's been a really tough year. So I just want to give thanks to Commissioner Labar and the heavy lifting he did on the county's end. So Ann Arbor thanks you.
Councilor Hayner.
Yeah, thanks. Regarding DC4 that we tabled, I appreciate being able to co-sponsor this. The more I looked into these rules, and everybody's happy at first when you say, "Oh, my auto insurance is going down," my rate's going down. When you really start looking at it, you realize it's no bargain, right? And there are people who are considering that these changes within the year are going to lead to mass waves of homelessness in our state, where people who had home care and other situations can no longer afford that, and they're going to be put on the streets, just like what happened in the 80s when they closed all the social services and mental health institutions and so on. They weren't always the greatest places, but it was better than being homeless, right? And so hopefully that'll come back in a form that we can really encourage the state to do the right thing for once. Now, we just postponed CA3, an important road resurfacing and water main replacement project, against staff wishes, because of concerns over the contractor. Meanwhile, we all voted for CA4, which was a $250,000 awarding to that contractor. And so here's the dead space where anybody can jump up and say, hey, I want to reconsider that. No? Okay. Just checking, because we want to be consistent in our treatment of these vendors. To be inconsistent in these treatment of these vendors is going to send the wrong message to people who want to do business with the city. They're going to think that we're picking and choosing vendors for reasons that are not publicly known, that are not part of the public trust. And so I think we need to be consistent when we deal with these vendors. So if you voted for CA4 and you voted against CA3, I'd like to know why. And that's all I'm going to say for tonight.
Councilmember Iyer.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. CA3 was for a very large water main project. CA4 was for a concrete pad. So that's the difference to me. I don't know that it's any more complex than that.
Further, Councilmember Griswold.
I want to acknowledge the statement by Michelle Hughes. I absolutely agree with her that we need to continue to work to improve the pedestrian and cycling infrastructure on the bridge. However, the negative energy that went into fighting a traffic lane and induced demand was really misdirected, because what that was is a right turn lane only on the bridge, and that was to address mainly emergency vehicle backups. So I'm going to continue to work on that, but it's very important that we focus on the details. Another example is the Traver Sidewalk project that continues to take a life of its own. The Traver Sidewalk was really driven by a need to have a drop-off zone on Traver for the STEAM school, and I did not support that, and the Lower Town engineer has also now come out not supporting it because it's too close to a dangerous intersection there at Barton. And the neighbors are working on a sidewalk on Traver, and I look forward to the Lower Town report. I expect it'll be out in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Further discussion? I'm sorry, further communication? Councilmember Rumlawi. Councilmember Briggs.
I tempers flared at the table tonight, and that's going to happen sometimes. But I would ask that folks might reflect a little bit about differentiate between what is good politics and what is collegial behavior. And there's kind of a repeated attempt week after week by some members at this table to accuse other members at this table of corruption. I personally, and I think all of us, try to hold ourselves to a high level of integrity. And so when repeatedly, insults are hurled at your colleagues simply for having different policy decisions, I'd reflect on, I understand that there's good politics, but it's not very good in terms of us working together collaboratively and collegially.
Councilmember Rumlawi.
I grew up as a Palestinian American, a person of color, in a predominantly white city, a racist city. I know firsthand racist tropes. I've experienced them. I thought I escaped them to come to a more inclusive community. Tonight I was compared to a gorilla by our mayor pro tem. And that's okay, because it's white privilege. It's okay, because you have the cover of a council majority. But being compared to a gorilla is not why I joined council. It's abhorrent. For a community and for a body that espouses the values it does, to allow and condone that language, Mr. Mayor, is unacceptable. When I suggest to look at campaign contributions, I'm not saying there's corruption. There's special interest. Look at the 45 households in this community that have contributed 50% of the political campaigns in this community. It's an oligarchy. That's all I'm saying. You don't need to be corrupt. Look at the public records. Look who's funding campaigns. Connect the dots. I'm not accusing anyone of corruption. I don't know. So I have no shame in representing my ward.
Council member?
When there's a major infrastructure improvement project in my ward, I'm going to speak for it.
Council member?
That's what I do. That's why I was voted for. And I look forward to the elections this year.
Your time's expired, council member. Further communication from council? May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Griswold, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.